Welcome to the Headley Highlight Show's Headley Headspaces. And this headspace is called Angela 3 Yards Rayner, the housing minister that houses herself, but just not you. So before I jump into my headspace, Angela 3 Yards Rayner, I will have 3 houses, but just not you, even though I'm the housing minister and the deputy prime minister. It's been a week or two since I've been on and I've been working on my live show. It's still a work in progress, but what I didn't want to do is lose the habit of doing my headspaces. So I'm doing one, even though the live show is not yet there. I'm working on it, people, but I have been seriously working on it. But before I jump into that, I always come with gratitude, and I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's been supporting my channel, liking, commenting and sharing, and also leaving donations, because I am very partial to 3 wings and chips and a Miranda or a Bitcoin. Even some ETH or Solana, I'm very happy with that. And now I have 1,942 subscribers. I'm eking my way to 2,000 and you'll be the first to know. So let me jump straight all over this particular headspace, which is Angela 3 Yards Rayner, which is colloquial for those people who don't understand what a yard is. A yard is a colloquial term from the early 70s for one's abode, a house. So Angela 3 Yards Rayner, the housing minister who houses herself and nobody else, and who also happens to be the housing minister for the whole country. It was an honest mistake that she didn't pay the stamp duty. Let's dive in, shall we, darlings? So for all those individuals who are unfamiliar with Miss Angela Rayner is the Deputy Prime Minister. She is also the Secretary of State. Shall I repeat that? The Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government. She became Deputy Prime Minister in July 2024. She's had various cabinet roles, including during April 2020, she was the party chairperson of the Labour Party and their campaign coordinator. So very high profile roles. She is the MP for Ashton-under-Lyne, and she's been there since 2015, and she's on a decreasing majority. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Angela Rayner, she is the face of the working class element, allegedly, of the Labour Party. She began, I think, within the trade union movement and has slowly moved her way up the tax bracket with her acquisitions and also her rise in the Labour Party. Hence the name 3 Yards Rayner, the housing minister who likes to house herself but nobody else. So the current controversy regarding the Deputy Prime Minister and the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, Angela Rayner, is that she appears to have somehow mysteriously underpaid on her stamp duty, a housing tax that the Secretary of State of Housing, Communities and Developments would be, in my view, aware of. But apparently she has, for some reason, based on, according to her, poor legal advice, was not able to pay the full complement. Interestingly, her apparent oversight impacts on her colleague and friend Rachel Reeves, or Rachel from accounts as I like to refer to her, because the Treasury lost out on £40,000 of receipts her colleague and friend would have pumped into it. Interesting, don't you think? The difficulty Miss Rayner finds herself in is that, as the Labour Party's working class mascot, her acquisition of assets seems somewhat out of kilter. Miss Rayner has a home in her Ashdown-under-Lyne constituency, which she acquired in 2016. That's house number one. Miss Rayner also has a Grace and Favour house in Admiralty House, which she has at her disposal because she's the Deputy Prime Minister. She is, once again, reiterate, she's the Secretary of State for Housing, so the government gives her another property to live in at the taxpayer's expense. And in addition to those two very comfy places that she has to rest her very weary head after a day of political machinations and working for the housing, communities and local government of the whole of the UK, she just went and purchased herself another property in Brighton and Hove, which has a much stronger Labour majority in some of the seats which are occupied there than the one that she currently occupies over at Ashton-on-the-Line. So to be clear, Miss Rayner has potentially the opportunities of 3 abodes for her to rest her head. She also has one which the public pays for. So the reason she's in sticky treacle is the allegation is being levelled at her that she effectively didn't pay the correct amount of tax that was liable on the purchase for the seaside front home in Hove. £800,000, that one. Initially, she treated her property as her main residence. This is the one in Hove that she's just bought. And that allowed her to pay a lower rate of a surcharge because the surcharge would have been applied fully if she had listed it as her second home, meaning that she would have paid £70,000 as opposed to £30,000. According to the latest reports, Miss Rayner took advice from not just one, not just two, but 3 tax advisors. She also went onto TV to cry those oh-so-effective white tears at garnering sympathy. Beth Rigby gave her the space to cry and basically say, oh, it was an honest mistake. How unsurprising. Due to the public pressure which is mounting around her, during the course of weeks, she suddenly admitted that she had an omission of understanding or somehow she received poor advice. And the subsequent result was the underpayment. Nothing to do with her, of course, no. The fact that she is the Secretary of State. I'm going to say it again. The Secretary of State, the highest person in the land dealing with housing, communities and local government as appointed by the King himself. In addition to that, she is the Deputy Prime Minister of the country. You'd think she'd be able to avail herself of proper advice given the seniority of her position. But alas, no, that hasn't occurred, and Miss Rayner sat puffy-faced on television explaining to everybody how life is difficult because she has a complex private life, and as a consequence of that, things didn't go quite as planned when it came to paying the correct amount of tax. One of the opportunities that Miss Rayner availed herself of so that she could plead ignorance in this situation was that she removed her name from the deeds of the house that she had previously shared with her husband, so that when you went to the tax advisors and they asked you where is your main residence, she was able to say, I don't have one because effectively I'm going to treat this property as my main residence despite the fact that I'm registered to vote in both areas, but only in one area do I not pay council tax. It's starting to stink like sawfish left in the sun under a bucket next to a Calagas heater. It's high, it's burning, and there's going to be a foul stench for some time to come. Miss Rayner has taken to the airwaves to blame everybody but herself. She then referred herself very, very gallantly to the Standards Committee. I don't think they even have anyone in post because the last 2 people resigned under Boris Johnson, and I'm not quite sure who's in that place or in that role now. So you've referred yourself to a committee with no chairperson and no lead individual. Very, very useful, I think. And I'm sure lessons will be learnt. And the stench of this particular oleaginous self-inflicted greed wound, because greed is such a terrible motivator. It actually beguiles common sense sometimes, the overriding desire for more, when you subsequently have a significant amount to begin with, and you're dodging paying council tax on the taxpayer house that the government is giving you already. And did I also throw in that you are not just, Miss Rayner, receiving your regular parliamentary salary, because you will be getting special responsibility salaries on top of everything else you're receiving and the pay rise that you also voted for yourself. However, the point I am making is that Miss Rayner has helped to solidify the stench of sleaze and greed, avarice and nose in the trough culture which appears to permeate the Labour Party. Maybe that's the reason that they're languishing at 13% in the polls, because they're spending their time ensuring they have lavish lifestyles when they leave office, because it looks very much like they're going to be booted out. So Miss Rayner is in further difficulty because apparently she utilised the loophole of removing her name from the deeds so that when she did get advice, if you only told them that you only had one house, effectively, and the other one's a public house, you could then classify it as your main residence. Miss Rayner also utilised the benefit of a trust that she had set up for her son. So Miss Rayner transferred her stake in her Greater Manchester house into a trust for her disabled son. And then very shortly afterwards, purchased the property in Hove. While these actions are not illegal, they have the stench of sleaze, hypocrisy, and a level of calculation that allowed you to have a financial gain. Why would you be buying a house in Brighton and Hove when you're the MP in Manchester? They're not exactly geographically close by. There's a good distance between. I mean, did you not plan to spend any more time in the constituency? Or was this just another opportunity for you to take in some sea air in the place where the Labour MPs have much higher majorities than the one than you currently have and you may be aspiring to get to? I'm of the opinion that Miss Rayner may have not given sufficient advice to the advisors so that they could advise her. I can't believe that the Deputy Prime Minister and the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government wasn't all over the whole stamp duty issue. I'm sorry, but I'm not buying that pig, and it's not flying past my window. Having deemed provisions, essentially a beneficial interest in a trust-linked property, still counts for stamp duty purposes, and you would expect the housing minister for the entire country to know that. She appears to have thrown the conveyancers under the bus. The optics are really, really poor. And given that you are the Deputy Prime Minister, I mean, if something happened, you'd be running the country. We'd expect you to be able to manage your own personal tax affairs. So in my opinion, this is not flying for me. I'm not interested in how many white tears she comes on the TV and cries on Beth Rigsby's show. I'm not interested in that. That's an old tactic as old as the hills. And don't give me the questions around misogyny. Yes, the misogyny is there, but the underlying issue is she is the Secretary of State for Housing. She is the Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government. She knows about the housing crisis. She knows about the housing plan. There's no way you're going to tell me she's not across her brief. And she is not a working class champion. She, in my opinion, is just like the rest of the individuals in the Labour Party, they are career individuals, and their concern for ordinary people is seldom demonstrated, in my opinion. You know, we've got a housing crisis, and we've got the Deputy Prime Minister, the lead member for Housing, Communities and Local Government, effectively having the appearance of dodging her tax and aggrandizing herself with more and more properties. I mean, you've got enough places to live, haven't you? So, in my opinion, Angela 3 Yards Rayner, the housing minister who houses herself and nobody else, I am not buying her excuses. I'm not buying the camaraderie, people putting their hands around her shoulder and saying, oh, poor you, Angela, you know, you're not very clever really, but you know, it's an honest mistake. How about none of the above? As far as I'm concerned, she can't fall on her ignorance and her poor legal advice as an excuse for effectively not giving proper receipts to HMRC that everyone else has got to pay. We all got to pay our tax. I mean, she was out there running her chops when Nadeem Zuhawi got into trouble with HMRC. So where is she now? She's crying on Beth Rigby, looking for sympathy. How about no? I think it's going to become more difficult for her to keep her position. And if this story gets hotter and hotter over the weekend, I think she could be toast. What's your 2 pence on this whole issue? Give me your thoughts, your 3 cities and your declining dollar price. Don't forget to make a donation and jump all over to my YouTube, which is denisehedley.com, and also my website, which is also the same name, denisehedley.com. Thank you so much for your listening ear, and cut!